Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about episode 7 of Unnamed Memory. Well, this episode was definitely something. I'm still not entirely sure what that thing is, but holy crap, I enjoyed most of it right up until about the last 5 minutes. I thought that it was really cool that we saw this whole conflict play out. I thought it was interesting to see what Lennox's overall plan was. I thought it was interesting to see Oscar dealing with the two siblings from the neighboring kingdom and the machinations that each of them seemed to have about different aspects and situations that were going on inside of the story. I liked the actual combat with the mages and the knights dealing with each other, the demons coming in, the spells being shifted, Tinasha's actual plan being revealed. All that stuff, that was great. That was all super duper enjoyable, and it was really fun to see this show just really fling itself into political intrigue and action in this way, and I really had a good time with that. Unfortunately, everything that happened in the first 15 to 17 minutes of the show was absolutely twisted and bastardized in the last 3 to 5. I often go through the comments on Crunchyroll for fun before I start watching a show, because often I'm late to the party. I usually come in around 1 in the afternoon for stuff. And I always go through the comments just to get a feel for what people are talking about, because I don't really care about spoilers. I'll be upfront with you. This is one of the reasons I basically do a spoiler channel, is because I don't care about spoilers. I want to talk about shows. I want to discuss shows. And sometimes I'm somebody who can get very anxious when I watch something. And if a show makes me a bit antsy in that way, I will go and see what people are saying about the latest episode before I watch it. It's just a me thing. And one of the things that I heard was, so she's his fiancée now, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how we're going to get there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so cool. This should be really interesting. Are we finally going to get some kind of progress? Are we finally going to get something that makes us believe that these two actually like each other equally and in return? And what I can tell you is exactly what I put on my thumbnail for this episode. Nope. That is not what we got. So at the ending of this whole major sequence that we had going on, we have this situation where it comes down to everybody expects Oscar to execute Tinasha, and he steps toward her, and Tinasha tells her attendants, it's fine, it's okay, this is what's supposed to happen. Oscar grabs the hilt of his sword. Suddenly Tinasha starts to faint. Oscar lets go of his sword and catches her. We then have her wake up in a bedroom in the castle, and she's like, why am I still alive? And that's a damn good question, because why is she still alive given what just happened, right? Well, apparently what's gone down is that Oscar told the people that she is his fiancée, and somehow that saved her life. First up, bullcrap. No, absolutely not. If the people actually believed that all the mages were evil, needed to be taken out, etc., that would be bullcrap. But then we find out that is not what happened to the mages. The anti-mage kingdom that was working with Oscar's kingdom in this whole situation actually rescinded its anti-mage practices and let the mages keep the area they were living in, even though they won the war, etc., etc. This is largely because of what happens with Tinasha earlier in the episode, where she speaks to that nation's prince over and over again, and they essentially reach some form of an accord, which was interesting. But here's the thing. If they are sparing all of these mages, why then would they still insist on executing Tinasha when Lanak and the mage general who were causing the trouble both ended up being killed by Oscar? We know they're dead. Especially given the fact that Tinasha was actually the person who allowed for the majority of this stuff to actually go down in such a way that the people were able to actually get to live freely and not end up being enslaved by the mages, while also, of course, completing her own personal goal of unlocking the lakes that held the souls of all of her subjects from 400 years prior. It just seems rather odd to me that we would get to this point where, even after everything that had happened, and given the fact that both the Witch of the Forest and Oscar would hypothetically be able to explain what the unconscious Tinasha did for the people, that people would still want to kill her. I'm sure there would still be some pockets that would realistically want to do that, because when people have prejudice against something, Nothing is going to change that. Sometimes when people have a prejudice against a person, a place, a thing, a concept, an idea, a whatever, it ends up permanently staining their heart, and there's nothing you can do. But the fact that we don't actually see those negotiations about Tinasha's future, and that we wake up with Oscar telling her, "You're my fiancé now, because that's the only way I could make it so you didn't die," leaves me with a hell of a lot of questions. Is that really the best you could do, Your Majesty? Is that really the length of your capacity for negotiation as a king? Because if it is, oh honey, you are in some serious trouble, because that is not going to work for you long term. Next up, if the point was that Oscar utilized this opportunity to be able to get Tinasha to be labeled as his fiancé so that she would have to accept him, given the circumstances, what makes him any better than Lynocke? I mean, you can make the argument, of course, that Oscar didn't stab her repeatedly in the stomach. You can make the argument that, yes, Lynocke talked about her as if she was a tool and indicated that he had no remorse over what he did to her in the past, whereas Oscar claims that he loves her. But the thing is, does Oscar actually truly love her? That's a very good question. I mean, I can see that Oscar is in love with her, or at the very least, with the idea of her, with the her she could be if she was with him, but that's not good enough. Being in love with an idea is not being in love, because being in love requires two willing and active participants, and we don't have that here. I'm sure Tinasha cares about him in some capacity. She's done things to help him in the past. She has been shown to have the potential to enjoy his company, but every time he's asked her to marry him, she has given him a clear and definitive no. For him to actually do this to her, to take away her agency, and to set this up in the way that he has, to me, in its own way, is every bit as brutal a betrayal as what Lynocke did to her in the past. Here's the thing. If Tinasha was an average young woman who had an average lifespan and who had lived an average life, if she was some pretty little princess who happened to have some magical powers, maybe I could understand the angle that Oscar is coming from. But Oscar is an 18-year-old young man who happens to be in love with the idea of a woman who is over 400 years old, who is carrying psychological trauma, and who has made it relatively clear in her behaviors and mannerisms that she don't want to be here no more. And yet, he is so focused on his own needs and desires that he is unwilling to recognize that fact and to let her go. That is not somebody you want to spend your life with. Now, to be fair, I don't necessarily hold this against Oscar because, as I just said, he's an 18-year-old young man. There's no way that he could hypothetically think of things from the point of view of a 400-year-old woman. That makes complete sense. But given that he is now the king and that he now needs to think not only of himself as an individual, but also as himself as a political leader, it would really have been in his better interests to actually find somebody more suitable to actually marry him. Somebody who would have the interests and intents of the kingdom in mind, and somebody who would be more relatable to his subjects. Of course, all of this is null and void, because if any of this were to come to pass, we wouldn't have a story, and obviously that would not work. I'm giving this a lot of grilling and a lot of a hard time, mostly because we don't actually see the sequence leading up to him telling her what happened, which leaves so much possibility for me, as somebody who likes to speculate on storytelling, to make arguments on what could have happened in that gap of time between her collapsing and her waking up. And yes, I'm likely playing at least a bit of devil's advocate, because I do still really genuinely want to see these two reach a point where they equally want to be together. And I am genuinely frustrated by the fact that I still don't feel that from them. I think what I've realized as I have looked at this episode and how the story was presented and everything is that one of my key issues with this story overall is the reality that These two are not in a situation where two people like each other, two people want to be together, two people have conflicts and internal issues and a number of other things that they're hurtling through to get together. I don't get that feeling of wanting to be together from Tinasha, which makes it so that Oscar's absolutely relenting determination, culminating in this episode in the way that he has set it up so that she will be his wife, is just gross. I don't like it. Now, hopefully they can do something to change my mind in the next 5 episodes. To be clear with you all, I'm not going nowhere. But this ending just rubbed me the absolute wrong way. I'm really sorry if it feels like I'm yelling at you guys. I've just needed to get this off of my chest because I was really getting into the episode and everything was going good and I was like, oh, they're gonna get back to figuring this out. And then this bombshell just dropped and I was like, what did you just do to me? And to Tinasha. And to Oscar, because I mean, like, this isn't going to work good for him either. He just doesn't realize that yet. Anyway, thank you all very much for putting up with me in this, because I'm probably a bit annoying this go around. But I'd also love to know, what did you guys think of this episode? Was there anything you super liked? What did you think of that ending? Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I will talk to you later. Bye!